26 attendees and the panelists who are on the call today. This is our last of the planned sessions of this 4-part webinar. So first of all, I just want to say that I'm very grateful, and it's quite remarkable that 30 or 35 of you have been coming and joining this session every Friday for the last 4 Fridays. You're doing this across group companies, across geographies, across levels of seniority, across functions. And as I was saying to Sam earlier, that's quite remarkable. The second thing is that when we started this program exactly a month ago, we were thinking that the crisis is a temporary crisis and all we have to do is to see the next month or two through. What is becoming clear, I think, to all of us 1 month later is that what was an acute crisis has now become something that is chronic. That yes, we will return to normalcy, but normalcy will be much slower, and that normalcy will be very different from what we might have anticipated. So in a way, this is not the end of the end. This is probably only the end of the beginning. And I guess there's a lot that can be done and needs to be done in the weeks and months coming forward. So for today's session, we are going to work with tiny habits, but as we normally do, please allow me a moment to share my screen and put up the PowerPoint. Yeah, so as we normally do, let's begin with a very quick presence practice. I hope that people are practicing it and getting familiar with this approach. So I invite everyone to sit in a relaxed manner in your chairs. Focus on the foundation of presence, which is a relaxed body. Scan your body and release any tightness or stiffness, tension that you can experience. Even breath is the first signal of presence. Take a few steady, normal breaths. Notice how your state starts changing immediately when you focus on your breath. Clear, calm, quiet mind. Notice what's running on the screen of your mind, and then shut down all those programs and apps one by one. Restore your mind to its clear, calm, quiet, pristine state. The third signal of presence is an open heart. Check your physical heart first, come into contact with it. Then the emotional heart, the place from which we connect, we engage, we relate. And as you are now familiar, open that emotional heart so that you may both reveal and receive genuine, authentic feelings, emotions, vulnerabilities. Get in touch with the human part of you, the heartful part of you. Now your senses, send them out into the environment, make them very receptive, very sharp, very vivid, very sensitive. Be fully context aware. And finally, energetic induction. Each one of us is a unique energy field. Expand that field to include and to be included. Wherever we are, whichever part of the region, whichever city, let's all be energetically connected. Now, in that state of presence, let's call out the affirmations. Again, you're familiar with all of them. The reality of this moment is that I have nothing to defend. I have nothing to promote. I have nothing to fear. The only reality of this moment is that I am here now. Hold that state of presence and make an intention to hold it for as long as you can throughout this session and throughout the day. And I welcome you back to the next part of our webinar. You can rub your palms, arms, legs and feet, torso. Back, scalp, face. Come back. Objectives of all the 4 sessions that we have done together. So if you remember, the first session was about hardiness and heartiness, where we learned the presence practice. The second session was about gratitude, and the practice we did was the lotus of gratitude. The third session was about stress and immunity, and many of you took the online diagnostic to get a snapshot of your stressors and your strengths. And today's session is about how do we sustain change. And the session is about tiny habits, which I will walk you through. So the objective was really for everyone to feel equipped and inspired, motivated in these difficult times. And so just wanted to give you an overview of that before we dive into our topic for today. So let me do a quick check-in. I had sent out the link to the Tiny Habits video, and I hope that all of you had a chance to look at that video. So what I'm going to do right off the bat is to ask you to type into your chat box, go to the chat box and type into the chat box, what was the highlight of the video for you? The one most important point that you felt, wow, this is something useful and interesting for me. So can you please type that into the chat box, please? And let's see what are some of the things that come up. Thank you, Mamta, Preeti, Chaivut, Jyoti, Nuvi, Chaivut again. Thank you, Sam. Any others? So far, I have about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10. Yes, Kiran, the behavior grid, ability and motivation. Yes, it looks like many of you have seen the importance of the triggers we can use. Thank you, Elisa. Great. So for those of you who, for whatever reason, could not see the video or may not have spent or given it much attention while you were watching it, I'm just going to very quickly walk you through the the principles of tiny habits, and then we will do a little activity. So I'm going to share my screen again. Here we go. So the first thing to point out is that we all want change, but we are actually change resistant. So if you say who wants change, everyone puts up their hands. But if you say who wants to change, nobody will participate. So if change is so hard, the question therefore becomes, if we want to improve ourselves, if we do want to bring about positive change, what do we need? And so what BJ Fogg's work shows us is that we have to find a way that requires low ability and low motivation. So Kiran, this is the grid that I think you were referring to, the ability and motivation grid. Wouldn't it be wonderful to find a way to bring about real change, even if there is low ability and low motivation? So tiny habits is a way of doing that. So what is a tiny habit? A tiny habit is a personal behavior that you do at least once a day. That means it must be very regular and be done on a daily basis. Ideally, it should take less than 30 seconds and it should require minimum effort. If it's anything other than this, then it's not a tiny habit and perhaps it is hard to sustain. How does a tiny habit work? So as we said, big behavior change is difficult to implement because it needs high motivation or high ability, which, let's be honest, most of us lack that. And tiny habits is a way to create minimally disruptive change, very, very small, that helps to take the next step towards bigger change. This is a very important point because what BJ Fogg is pointing out is that we tend to think about big leaps and big change and big breakthroughs when actually evolution happens in an incremental fashion. And therefore, if we can take that into account and bring about these small incremental changes, they add up very quickly. For example, if I want to walk every morning for 30 minutes, a tiny habit could be that I put on my walking shoes immediately after I get out of bed. So this is a little disruption, but it is something that if I can do, it helps me to take the next step. So making this tiny habit automatic improves the chances of graduating to a regular habit and therefore to the desired outcome. So this is broadly the structure of how the tiny habit actually works. And so for those of you who've seen the video, he points out very beautifully that tiny habits need low motivation. You need not be so heavily motivated. It must be very easy to do. That means it must not require a very high ability or a high expertise or a high competence in anything. And as many of you have pointed out in your feedback, it requires an anchor or a trigger of an existing behavior. Now, there is a fourth point which he talks about in his video, which is also extremely important, which is the celebration, which is to reward and reinforce and reaffirm when you actually make that tiny little change. And when you put these four things together, you get into a virtuous cycle from which you can have many, many bigger changes. So he also shows us that there is a way to articulate these tiny habits. And this is what we are going to practice in a second. So the approach is this. After then I put in that anchoring or that triggering activity that I normally do, routinely do. I will perform this new tiny behavior, which I am now going to introduce into this routine. So after anchoring activity, I will do the new behavior. So for example, after I open my laptop in the morning, I will become present while it boots up. So you can see how it is connected to a specific activity that I know is part of my routine. And then To it, I'm going to attach my new tiny habit. Well, let me show you another example. You can also use the word before instead of after, if that makes more sense. So here is one. Before I shut the front door, I will check for my phone, wallet, keys, and glasses. Now, for somebody like me who's in my late 50s, this is a very important tiny habit because I have actually shut the front door, sometimes leaving the keys at home. So these are two examples that I have personally used, which I wanted to share with you. So here are many more examples. I'm just going to be silent for a minute until all of you can read these for yourselves. These come from the database that BJ Fogg has created on tiny habits. I like this one a lot. After I hear a phone ring, I will exhale and relax for 3 seconds. It's interesting, isn't it, that when the phone rings, actually our blood pressure goes up. Instead of which, what we can do is to take just 3 seconds and exhale and relax and bring our blood pressure down. So I hope you have a sense of what a tiny habit looks like. So now what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll share my screen and I'll then stop sharing it. Your task now is to take maybe 3 minutes, and I would like you to select any one area of well-being or resilience. Any one area. It could be one of the stressors, physical, emotional, mental. It could be anything that you want to really build up and develop in yourself. And what I want you to do is, I would like you to articulate the tiny habit that you will implement from today, starting today. And I want you to do that in the chat box. Please declare it in the chat box, and please use the approach after I or before I dot 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 I will dot dot dot. So let me give you a few minutes to 3 minutes to for each one of you to come up with one tiny habit that you would like to introduce into your life. Go. What would you like to do? Kiran, that is brilliant. Before I sit down on the couch to watch the next episode, I will do one push up. Deepika, you have said the I will, but you have not specified what is that tiny habit and after what triggering behavior or before which triggering behavior will you use it. So please give that some more thought. Sabrina, that's a very nice one. After I knock off from work, I will remove my work hat and put on my family hat. Wonderful. Come on, let's hear the others. What tiny habit can you? Before I complain about somebody, I will take 3 deep breaths and think of the good things they have done. Wonderful. Before I go to bed. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. You're all getting it. Excellent. I want to see some more. Wonderful. Thank you, Fen. Jordan, nice one. Excellent idea, Guy. It's okay, Nalini. Please articulate it. Take another shot at it. The panelists are also welcome to type in their tiny habits. This is not only for the attendees. Panelists, you can add in yours too. Sam, Anju, Neeraj, Jay, Anamika, Carol. Yes, Deepika, now you're getting it. Excellent, Anju. That's a great example of a tiny habit. After I have dinner, I will walk 50 steps. That's it. Nice one, Neeraj. Jay, it's a nice I will, but it's not yet linked to a triggering behavior, a triggering thing that you normally do. Aha, nice one, Preeti. Beautiful, Sam. So excellent. I can see that everyone's getting the hang of it. I'm going to share my screen again. Those of you who are still writing, please keep writing. Don't stop. And so my request to you is, now that you've declared it, please start practicing it. And don't forget to celebrate, right? You can find your own ways to celebrate, or you can find a common way to celebrate. I leave that up to you. And if any one of you wants to email me, if you need help, or if you're struggling, or if you're not understood this particular thing, don't hesitate to email me. So let me just take a pause here, and if anyone would like to add in some questions into the Q&A section of this of the chat, you're welcome to do so. So since we are almost at 10 o'clock, we just have a few more minutes. What I'd like to do is I would like everyone to type in the chat box the answer to the first question, while I request my colleague to get ready to run the feedback poll. The first question is, thinking back about these 4 sessions that we've been through from the 2nd of May till today, what has been the single most valuable thing for you from this program? I would like everyone to please type in what has been the most valuable thing for you in this 4 session program. Can you please type into the chat box? Thank you, Sulina, Preeti, Jyoti, Preeti, Mamta, Jordan, Sabrina, Kiran, Chaibut. Thank you, Nuvi. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Guy. Thank you, I. Chaibut again. Mike, Fen. Thank you, Gary. Yes, you're so right, Carla. It's not just about us, it's also about supporting each other and remaining positive together. Thank you for your kind words, Florence. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Nalini. Okay, so I'm now going to request my colleague Aditya to please run the poll. It's a very simple poll of 2 questions only. So I invite you to please answer these 2 questions. I'll give you about a minute. So as of now, we have 23 out of 29 votes. So still 5 or 6 people remaining. Another 3 more remaining out of 29. And please don't worry, this voting is entirely anonymous, so you're welcome to express your free and frank opinion. Please go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to request Aditya, maybe in another 30 seconds, to end the poll and to publish the results so you can all see the results of the poll. Aditya, you can end the poll and publish the results. Please go ahead. So that's great. Thank you, everyone. It looks like about 60% of you are satisfied and about 40% of you are very satisfied with this webinar. That is great feedback for both Sam and me, who have been Sam the sponsor and me who is the facilitator. And also that about 60% of you are very likely to recommend such a program to others. This is the first time that we have designed and run a ongoing program of webinars like this. So it's good to know that you would recommend it to others as well. And another 30% of you are likely to recommend it. So that's about a 90%. Thank you very much for that feedback. So I'm going to stop sharing the results and hand over back to Samantha to make any closing remarks that she would like to make.
I will do.
Before we get to the Q&A.
Okay. Just audio, VJ. You're not putting me on screen.
Unless you want to, Sam.
No, I'm fine. I'm very happy. On behalf of everyone, I just want to say a huge thank you. I mean, this was an idea, obviously, that we had, and VJ, not only have you given all of the time to run these sessions free, but I appreciate the team behind this and the amount of prep that has gone into doing it. And I just think from the engagement levels on an ongoing basis, obviously the feedback you've just seen, but the comments and the interaction that we've seen through this, how invaluable this has been. And we are, on behalf of all of us, and I mean OMG leadership team as well, incredibly grateful. I think the things I've seen and actually just ideas, I mean, we spoke briefly before, this is the first time we've ever run an initiative like this across regional boundaries, across the different brands, and it has been so successful. And I think that there's something really to be said for the community and for people coming out of this. The biggest thing now is that we're not going back to normal anytime soon, and that things are potentially only going to continue to get harder, is that you have a support network here. And whether it is wanting to buddy up with someone from this program or reach out to me and want to have some small closed chats with other groups, let's continue how we can keep that conversation for those who really do want the connection, because we're all going through different stages of entering back into the workforce, but we're all still dealing with different emotions. So I think on that, the other thing I want to say on behalf of, I think what this has done is set up how much, this is only the starting phase. And as I said, it's 6 months. So we've already centrally committed to continuing to produce a monthly mailer all around health and wellbeing. So we had the first one was on coping with COVID. The second one was just released this week on sort of maximizing the moment. And the conversations Justin, Niraj and I are having is that this is going to be another 6 to 12 months. And how do we navigate the new normal and what resources can we have? So BJ, thank you. We will be hugely tapping into the font of knowledge you've given us. And obviously, again, in the future, as and when things come back, there has obviously been a huge appreciation and interest in your course. All of our budgets are frozen at the moment. But again, I think if markets did want to engage you, I know that you would be more than happy. And we've also proven we can do these things remotely. So thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Anju, for initiating this. And thank you to my team at the back end who's made all of this happen. And a big, big, big shout out to all of the participants, those of you who could attend all the sessions or even a few of them. It's been a great learning experience, and I look forward to staying in touch. Thank you and goodbye. Preeti has asked the question, stress builds out without we realizing many times. How do we build tiny habits on managing stress? So what I would say in response to this, Preeti, is don't look at stress as a single big thing. That's the reason why in the HHQ, I invited all of you to actually see which specific stressor do you want to work on. So for example, if you want to work on physical stress and you want to work on the dietary part of physical stress, then you introduce a tiny habit in relation to that. Similarly, if somebody, let's say, wants to work on emotional stress, and let's say they want to work on anger or anxiety, then you introduce a tiny habit to address that. I suspect that if you try to introduce a tiny habit to look at stress as a whole, I think you will find it very hard because it may be out of context. So take a tiny part of the stress and then build a tiny habit for it or around it would be my advice. I hope that makes sense. Anju, anything else?
That's the only question that has come in. So thank you very much. Much appreciate.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
And stay present and stay resilient.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks, Vijay.
Bye.
Vijay, are you staying on?